are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final. We are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final. We are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday, January 22nd. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, but before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, with that being said, let's get right into what we will talk about. We're going to recap all of the divisional round matchups. We'll start from the best games and then work our way down to the least entertaining games. But 3 of the 4 were very entertaining. It was really just the Ravens-Texans game that was a blowout. So I kind of just ordered it in, the chaos, I guess. How competitive the games were. That's just how I did it. But yeah, we're gonna recap all the games in the divisional round. And yeah, so that'll be the show. So we'll start off with the Chiefs-Bills game. Then we'll go to the Packers-49ers, then the Lions-Bucks game, and then we will conclude the show with recapping the Ravens-Texans game, which was a blowout. So I figured we'd do that one last. So let's get right into the first game we're going to talk about, which is recapping the Chiefs-Bills game. So obviously Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes have played each other in the playoffs twice going into this matchup. This would be the third matchup. Now this is in Buffalo because obviously the previous 2 matchups were in Arrowhead. And, for me, I did the segment last week, is third time's a charm for Josh Allen, because, again, the previous 2 matchups were losses to Patrick Mahomes. And unfortunately for the Bills and Josh Allen, third time was not a charm. And the Chiefs were able to get the win 27-24, a great game from start to finish. I think there were, 4 lead changes in the game. Both quarterbacks played well in this matchup, but ultimately it was the Chiefs that got the win. So we'll go through the drive summaries, the game summary really quickly. So The Bills went right down the field, almost 7 minutes of time of possession, and they kicked a field goal. Then the Chiefs answered with a field goal of their own, so the game was tied at 3-3. Tyler Bass made a 27-yard field goal, and then Harrison Butker made a 47-yard field goal. Then the Bills, on their next drive, went down the field, 11 plays, 75 yards, 6 minutes and 3 seconds of time possession down the field. And Josh Allen scored a rushing touchdown from 5 yards out, so that put them up 10-3. Then the Chiefs, on their next drive, they kicked a field goal. McCole Hardman actually fumbled on the possession, but the Chiefs were able to get it back, thankfully for them. And then Butker kicked a 29-yard field goal, so that made it 10-6. And I was saying, I'm like, that's not good. If the Bills are scoring touchdowns and the Chiefs are kicking field goals, that's not good. But it didn't really matter. The Chiefs were able to get a stop on defense, and they went 5 plays, 65 yards, 2.5 minutes of time possession. That was set up by a 28-yard run by Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And on 2nd and 10, Patrick Mahomes connected with Travis Kelce for a 22-yard touchdown, and there was just nobody covering him. He was wide open. No Bills defenders around him, and that put the Chiefs up 13-10. But then the Bills answered with a big touchdown drive. Josh Allen, another rushing touchdown from 2 yards out. So at the half, the Bills were up 17-13, and then the Chiefs, right out of the second half, went down the field, 6 plays, 75 yards, 3 minutes, 12 seconds of time of possession, 30-yard pass play to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, then a 24-yard scramble by Mahomes on the drive, 14-yard reception by Isaiah Pacheco, and that led to another Travis Kelce touchdown, and that put the Chiefs up 20-17. And then the Bills answered with a big touchdown drive, 8 minutes, 25 seconds of time of possession, and Josh Allen connected with Khalil Shakir for a 13-yard touchdown. Big play in the game. Bills were fired up after that, so that put them up 24-20. But then the Chiefs answered. They went right down the field. A 32-yard reception by Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and that set up a Isaiah Pacheco 4-yard touchdown. And, that ended up being the final score, because then the Bills turned it over on downs. So this is where I got, as a fan, I was very mad at the Bills, because so it was 4th and 5, and they decide to run a fake punt, and they don't get it. And I'm sitting there going, this game is so close, and the Chiefs are moving the ball up and down the field. Why are you giving them a short field? And again, it's just me as a fan. But then again, it didn't really matter, because then Pacheco runs for 29 yards, and I'm thinking, yep, here come the Chiefs. They're going to score now, and that's going to be it. And then they decide to do a play with McCole Hardman, and I thought it was an end around, but I guess it was the tap pass, I guess. And Hardman ends up fumbling, and it goes into the back of the end zone. It's a touchback, and the Bills get the ball back. So I'm like, all right, well, that didn't kill them, but it didn't even matter, because the Bills ended up not scoring again. But yeah, the Bills punted. Then the Chiefs punted. Now, this is what on this drive, though, it didn't have any impact really on the game, but it's 3rd and 6. Bills get off the field, and then all of a sudden, there's a late flag for defensive pass interference. And it was the right call, but why did the refs take so long to call that? Why did it take so long? That should not have taken that long. They should have called that right away, but they didn't do that. And that's why you got people saying Chiefs get the flags, because of that. Because that should have been thrown immediately. Why did it take so long? But yeah, it did. Like I said, didn't have any impact. The Chiefs ended up punting, and then the Bills, they took the ball down the field, got into field goal range. Josh Allen actually fumbled, but they were able to recover it, thankfully. Again, didn't really matter. But they got into field goal range, 44-yarder, and Tyler Bass missed it. It went wide right. And that basically was the end of the game. And the Chiefs ran out the clock. They picked up a first down. And the Bills are going home. The Chiefs are advancing to their 6th consecutive AFC Championship game. And they will be playing the Ravens next week. For the stats with this game, I actually forgot to do that. So Patrick Mahomes went 17 to 23, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Isaiah Pacheco had a really good game, 15 carries for 97 yards and a touchdown. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 2 for 31. The Chiefs as a team ran the ball for 146 yards in total. Travis Kelce was their leading receiver, had a good game, 5 receptions for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. Valdez-Scantling, those 2 big receptions, 2 receptions for 62 yards. Rashee Rice actually got banged up in this game. He had 4 receptions for 47 yards. Obviously, Hardman had 2 fumbles. One of them was recovered by the Bills. But no sacks on Josh Allen in this game. And then for the Bills, Josh Allen, 26 to 39, 186 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Josh Allen was their leading rusher, 72 yards rushing with 2 rushing touchdowns. James Cook, 61 yards on the ground. Ty Johnson, 40 yards on the ground. The Bills ran the ball for almost 200 yards, 182 yards in total. Dalton Kincaid, 5 receptions for 45 yards. Was their leading receiver. Khalil Shakir had that big touchdown, 7 receptions for 44 yards. Stephon Diggs, only 3 receptions for 21 yards. I mean, I don't know. I was looking at his stats from earlier in the year. So you go back to his first 4 games, 102 yards receiving. Week 2 against the Raiders only had 66. But then 111 against the Commanders, 120 against the Dolphins with 3 touchdowns, 121 against the Jaguars, 100 against the Giants. And then after that, he did not get 100 yards for the rest of the season. I don't know what happened there. Now, also people point to the drops in this game. Diggs had a big drop. I mean, Allen threw that ball up into the stratosphere, and it came down, and Diggs did not hold on to it. Diggs could have caught that. And then there was another one, I think, to Sherfield as well. But the other thing, too, is you got into field goal range, and Tyler Bass just missed it. And Tyler Bass is a good kicker, but not there. Not there. That was I couldn't believe it. I had my hands on my head. I was like, I can't believe that's what it comes down to, is a field goal kicker missing a kick. And we'll talk about something that happened in the next game we recap, where that was kind of the same thing, and that kind of, basically dictated the game. It was a big moment in the game. But yeah, I mean, the Bills, they were running the football effectively last night. And the Chiefs early on, like Mahomes was missing some throws, but in the second half, the Chiefs, they turned it up. And, I mean, listen, I had them going to the AFC Championship game. On the AFC side of my bracket, the only game I got wrong was the Browns-Texans game. Everything else I've gotten right. The NFC, the Niners I have right, but everything else was just was not good picking-wise. But, I mean, this was the Bills' shot. I feel like this was because the conference is going to be better next year, because you have Burrow coming back. The Browns, hopefully they figure out their quarterback situation. I mean, there's going to be, the Jets with Aaron Rodgers coming back, although people are down on that. I'm kind of down on that as well. But still, like, this was the Bills, and the Chiefs aren't the same offensive juggernaut they have been in years past. And they couldn't get it done at home. And they were at home for this time around against Mahomes. Mahomes' first playoff game on the road it wasn't going to affect him. I mean, I know we were making a big deal out of it. I mean, it was a big deal just because it's been, 6 years, and he's never played a road playoff game. I mean, you could count. I mean, he even said it himself in the press conference that they did play on the road in Tampa for the Super Bowl against the Bucs. So it's not like, and also, last year, they played in Arizona against Philly, and it's a neutral site, but still there's crowd noise impacting the game. So it's not like this is just some this is foreign territory for him. He's kind of used to it, but an official playoff game on the road, he's never had to do that until yesterday, and he did what he was supposed to do. And the Chiefs ran the football effectively, which is something that they've done well this year. And they got the stops when they needed to on defense. And with the Bills, I mean, I don't know where you go from here. They kind of suffered a similar playoff loss like the Cowboys, because it's like this was your shot, and these it's hard to get back to this point, and again, like I said, for the Bills, you got Burrow coming back next year, and Burrow's giving them problems. Josh Allen hasn't beaten Burrow yet, between the playoff matchup and the regular season matchup this year. So it's going to be tough. And the other thing, too, is they had a lot of injuries. There's no question about it. But in the second half, when they really needed to, and, they got the touchdown with Shakir, but then they didn't do anything after that. I mean, they got the ball in the field goal range, but, it's just unfortunate that it had to come down to that. But, yeah, I don't know what the Bills do from here. It's going to be a long off season for them, and I know there was a lot of drama with Stephon Diggs off the field on like rumors and stuff on if he wants out, might want out because he really was a non-factor for a while now, even with the Bills winning all those games, and maybe he's going to want to go elsewhere because since the AFC Championship game where you remember he was watching the Chiefs celebrate, the Bills never got back there again. So he might want to go elsewhere. So let me know what you guys think about this game. It was a great game, but unfortunately someone had to go home, and it was the Bills. So the Chiefs, they move on. They take on the Ravens next week. So when we come back from our first break of the show, we are then going to talk about another great game, and that was on Saturday night. That was between the 49ers and the Packers. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to talk about another great game from this weekend, and that is the Green Bay Packers and the San Francisco 49ers game. The 49ers narrowly defeating the Packers 24-21. And I had the 49ers winning, but I thought it was going to be one of those games where it was going to be close for a little bit, and then the 49ers were eventually going to pull away. And that never happened. The 49ers had to come back in this game. And like I said, great game. Also, Deebo Samuel left this game very early with a shoulder injury, and his status is up in the air for the NFC Championship game. So that's something to keep an eye on. And the 49ers definitely missed him. Both quarterbacks in this game, it was ugly. They made some good throws, but they also missed some throws. And some throws should have got intercepted. For Jordan Love, he threw a couple of picks. Brock Purdy didn't have any picks in this game, but he definitely should have had at least one because Darnell Savage dropped an interception, and he had a pick six against Dallas last week. He could have had a pick six here. But let's go through the game summary. So the Packers, they went right down the field just like they did against the Cowboys. 14 plays, 58 yards, 7 minutes, 38 seconds of time of possession down the field. But instead of getting a touchdown, they had to settle for a Carlson field goal. So that put them up 3-0. The Niners punted, then the Packers turned it over on downs. They went for this was set up by a 38-yard reception by Romeo Doubs. But yeah, so it was 4th and 1, and the refs in this game, bad spots with where they were placing the ball, and this was one of them because it looked like Jordan Love actually may have gotten closer, and they didn't put it as closer as I thought it should have been to the first down marker. But yeah, the Packers, they ended up turning it over on downs. Niners turned that into a touchdown. That was a touchdown to George Kittle for 32 yards. So that put the Niners up 7-3. Then the Packers answered with a field goal, and then the Niners, Mooney got his kick blocked. So it was 7-6 49ers at the half. So this was still a ball game. Then the Niners punted to open up the second half. Packers answered with a touchdown drive, 9 plays, 75 yards, 4 minutes of time possession. And Jordan Love connected with Bo Melton for a 19-yard touchdown. We talk about Kelsey being wide open, Melton wide open. But the 49ers defensive back did slip. So that's why Melton was so wide open. But yeah, so that put the Packers up 13-7. And then the 49ers answered with a touchdown drive. That was set up by George Kittle George Kittle 32-yard reception. Christian McCaffrey scored a rushing touchdown, 39-yard rushing touchdown, so that put them up 14-13. And then on the next drive, Keyshawn Nixon runs it back for 73 yards. Then he fumbles, but the Packers, thankfully, they jumped on it. They got the ball back. Then a 15-yard reception by Romeo Doubs, 3-yard run by Aaron Jones, and then Jordan Love connected with Tucker Kraft for a 2-yard touchdown. And then they would go for the 2, and they got it. Jordan Love connects with Aaron Jones for the 2-point conversion. So the Packers are up by 7 in this game. And then the 49ers punted on their next drive. Then Jordan Love throws an interception, and that was to Dre Greenlaw. Niners then get a field goal out of that. That was Jake Moody from 52 yards. So the Packers still had the lead. Then they punted. The Niners punted again. And then the Packers missed a field goal. Carlson misses a 41-yard field goal. And this was set up. A 53-yard run by Aaron Jones. And I think this game might be over. I thought the Packers were going to, score again. And, Carlson ends up missing the field goal. And then the Niners get it back. Christian McCaffrey finishes off that drive with a 6-yard touchdown, and that puts him up 24-21. Jordan Love has an opportunity to get the ball back, and they do pick up a first down, but then, and Jordan Love, listen, he's been playing great football as of late, but he kind of reverted back to what he was doing earlier in the season. He was rolling out, threw across his body into the middle of the field, trying to hit Christian Watson. But Dre Greenlaw picked that up. He returned it for 18 yards. He actually didn't go down. He just kept running with it. And the Packers were trying to knock it out. So that was the game-sealing interception. And the Niners ended up winning that game, narrowly defeating the Packers, as I titled the segment. And they move on to the NFC Championship game for the third year in a row. And to look at the stats for the game, Jordan Love went 21-34, 194 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Again, had his moments. Both quarterbacks had their moments, their good moments and their bad moments. And Jordan Love, the second pick, that was bad. And then Aaron Jones had a good game, another 100-yard rushing performance, which I didn't think was going to happen. But the Packers did run the ball well in this game. I was surprised by that. A big chunk of Aaron Jones' yards were, the 53-yard run, but still, it was a good game for him. Romeo Doubs, leading receiver, 4 receptions for 83 yards. Boat Melton had 1 reception for 19 yards. That was for the touchdown. Tucker Kraft had a touchdown. Jaden Reed had 4 for 35. The Packers had 1 sack in the game, and then on the other side, the 49ers, Brock Purdy, 23 of 39, 252 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Christian McCaffrey, 17 carries, 98 yards, and 2 touchdowns. George Kittle was the leading receiver, 4 receptions for 81 yards and a touchdown. Juwan Jennings had 5 for 61. Ayuk had 3 for 32. McCaffrey had 77 for 30. Dre Greenlaw, 2 picks in the game. No sacks for the Niners in the game. But yeah, it was a very good game. But listen, the Niners, if they're going to want to go to the Super Bowl, they cannot play like that because they struggled throughout that game. And listen, Brock Purdy put together a great game-winning drive at the end of the game, but if they want to win this, if they want to get to the Super Bowl and win it, they cannot play like they did against the Packers. I thought the Packers did a great job. Their defense played really well. And their offensive line as well. I mean, that held up. And I said, listen, you give Jordan Love time to throw, the Packers are going to be able to move the ball. And they did. Although, he passed for 194 yards, the 2 picks. But, the Packers, they had the 49ers. I mean, they had their opportunities. And it's just unfortunate that their season came down to, their kicker not being able to. Because then the game would have been tied at the end of the game. And they really had him. I really did think, when Aaron Jones had that 53-yard run, I thought that was it. I thought maybe the game was going to be over, but then they didn't get any points out of it. I just didn't want that game to end because that game was really good. But Yeah, it's just same story, different year with the Packers and the 49ers. The 49ers again beat the Packers in the playoffs. Although again the Packers played really well. The defense again, I mean, they they played better than I expected. Even though, McCaffrey had, a big run for the touchdown in this game. But again, the 49ers have so many weapons that it's hard to stop them. But the Packers did good enough where they should have won this game. But ultimately, they fall a little bit short. But you know what? I mean, credit to them for getting this far. They got a bright future. The youngest team in the NFL. They're just getting started. A couple of things. I mean, obviously, Jordan Love throwing the pick at the end, and that was something that he was doing a lot, like against the Broncos, against the Raiders, against the Steelers, throwing game-ending interceptions. That's something he's going to have to work on. Is you got to try not to force everything, which I think they will. They'll correct that. And the Packers, they have their quarterback moving forward. This team is going to be good. You would think for a long time with how young they are. Again, they're just getting started. The fact they were way ahead of schedule here, and they got to the divisional round, and they had the number one. They were the 7th seed. They had the number 1 seed on the ropes. It just credit to them. Credit to Matt LaFleur, because I criticized him. I wasn't really a Matt LaFleur believer. But the fact that this team had a roller coaster of a season, and they were able to keep it together and make the playoffs and get this far and almost beat the 49ers. There's also credit to the coaching staff as well. So I give him a lot of credit. Jordan Love, I mean, he really turned it on after, again, the GM for the Packers spoke out like this is going to be, how we, evaluate Jordan Love is, this, second half of the season, and he delivered. Credit to him as well. I'll give Joe Barry credit. Now, I know Packers fans probably don't want to hear that because the Packers defense at some points has been awful, but these 2 games against the Cowboys and against the 49ers, defense did its job. So, I mean, we'll see if he comes back next year. But the Packers, they got a lot to be happy about. But obviously, the way they lost, you don't want to lose that way. Again, they had the number 1 seed on the ropes, and they couldn't get it done. But very good game. It was, again, one of the best games of the weekend. I mean, again, 3 of the 4 games were great. It's just, the Ravens-Texans game, not so much. But, yeah, so the 49ers, they advance. They will be taking on the Detroit Lions, who we will be talking about shortly. But, again, got to see if Deebo Samuel is going to be healthy for this game. Because if he's not, again, we saw and how the 49ers are playing in this game, it just brought me back to that, 3-game stretch where they didn't have Deebo, and the offense was at times struggling. Again, Brock Purdy, got lucky he didn't throw an interception in this game because there were a couple times he should have. Also, again, missed penalties in this game. I mean, you had him just throwing a pass out of bounds, no receiver in the area, and they didn't call intentional grounding on that. And I think that's what set up the McCaffrey touchdown. So, again, the officiating, it's going to be bad, but they got to do something about it. Yeah, again, just another missed flag there, because then again that set up the McCaffrey touchdown. But yeah, it just it's a heartbreaker for the Packers. Niners, again, you can't play like that next week. You just can't. If they want to win the Super Bowl, they gotta figure it out. And maybe it's because they were rusty from being off, for a couple of weeks. I mean, they didn't play most of their starters in week 18, and then of course you have the bye, so maybe there's that. I mean, even the Ravens, like, they started off a little bit slow in their game, but then obviously they turned it up. So maybe it's because of that. But again, you go back to that 3-game stretch where they didn't have Deebo Samuel and they were a completely different team. And Brock Purdy was turning the ball over. Didn't turn the ball over in this game, but almost did. But again, they won. It was a nail biter. But credit to them for getting the win. And they will be hosting the NFC Championship. So this is the 3rd year in a row they're making it. But the last 2 years they had to go to Philly, they had to go to LA. I mean, well, even though there were a bunch of 49ers fans there for that NFC Championship game. But now that this time it's at home, so that's good. So we'll see what happens when they take on the Lions, who we'll talk about in a second. So before we go to break, again, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we will recap the Lions-Buccaneers game, which again was a great game, and the Lions advance to the NFC Championship, take on the Niners. So we will talk about that when we return from our second break of the show. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about the Lions-Buccaneers game from yesterday. Very entertaining game. So we'll start off with the game summary. So right away, the Lions get the ball, quick 3-and-out. So that was huge for the Bucs in this game. But then they Baker throws an interception. But again, not entirely his fault because, well, first he got sacked on the previous play, so that was set up a 3rd and 17, throws to Mike Evans, and it gets deflected and intercepted by C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who was talking a lot of smack before the game about Baker, that, you know, the Bucs receivers would be even better if they had a better quarterback, along the lines of that. And then he just tossed the ball to Baker. Then he had something to say after that, which it didn't make me happy, because, you know what, Baker played really well in this game, even with the 2 picks. The first one wasn't his fault. The second one was, which we will get to. But then that only set up a Lions field goal. So Michael Badgley kicked a 23-yarder. So yeah, that was big, you know, only keeping the Lions to 3. Then the Bucs answered with a field goal of their own. Chase McLaughlin kicked a 43-yarder. So it was 3-3. And then the Lions got a touchdown. They went 14 plays, 75 yards, almost 7 minutes of time of possession. And Jared Goff connected with Josh Reynolds for a 9-yard touchdown. Josh Reynolds has been good for them. 2 former Rams, obviously defeating the Rams last week. Still getting it done together, on their new team. But yeah, so Lions were up 10-3. Both teams then punted to start the second quarter. Then the Bucs tried to kick a field goal, and Chase McLaughlin missed the 50-yarder. Then the Lions punted, and then the Bucs tie the game to go into the half. A 7-play, 92-yard drive. 1 minute, 13 seconds of time of possession. Baker had a 14-yard scramble, a 27-yard reception by Mike Evans, then a 29-yard reception by Mike Evans, and that was a great catch by him to set up the Cade Otton 2-yard touchdown, and that was big. So at the half, the Bucs offense was, struggling a little bit, but that was a big drive there to tie the game and to go into the half. Then the Bucs opened up the second half with a punt. Lions punted, Bucs punted. Lions got it back. They scored a touchdown, a 29-yard reception by Brock Wright, the other tight end. And they went for it on 4th and goal, which is, again, a huge gamble, but it paid off. Now, this wasn't Jahmyr Gibbs. This wasn't David Montgomery. It was Craig Reynolds from 1 yard out scoring a touchdown. So that put the Lions up 17-10. But then the Bucs answered with the field goal, with the touchdown. Set up by a 27-yard reception by Cade Otton. And this was on 3rd and 10. And, I thought this was a great play call. Baker connected with Rachaad White for a 12-yard touchdown. And, that was on like a screen, and it just worked out perfectly for them. So that ended up tying the game at 17 all, but then the Lions ended up scoring a touchdown anyways on the next drive. 12 yards to Jahmyr Gibbs, 18 yards to Josh Reynolds, an 8-yard run by Gibbs, and then a 31-yard run by Jahmyr Gibbs that put them up 24-17, and that was almost 2 minutes. So that was a quick drive by the Lions. Then the Bucs punted, and then the Lions scored another touchdown, and you thought, this is pretty much it. They went 10 plays, 89 yards, almost 6 minutes of time of possession. 24 yards to Jamison Williams, 16 yards to Amon-Ra St. Brown, 20 to Jahmyr Gibbs, 7 by Sam Laporta, and then a 4-yard run by Gibbs, and then Jared Goff completed a 9-yard touchdown pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and that put them up 31-17. Bucs got the ball back, but they did answer. It was a quick drive, nine plays, 75 yards. And this was on 4th and 14. 4th and 14, Baker connected with Mike Evans for a 24-yard reception. Then 11 to David Moore. Then 17 yards to Chris Godwin. And then Baker Mayfield connected with Mike Evans for a 16-yard touchdown. So then it was 31-23. They went for 2, which I didn't like. Again, it would still be a one-score game. Like, you would just have to get a touchdown and, score 2 there. But, they were hoping that, they get the 2 and then they get the ball back and then they go for the win. But I don't know. I wasn't a fan of it. I would have been a fan of it if they got it, but I wasn't a fan of it. It was 31-23. Then the Lions punted, and I'm like, okay, all right, let's see what Baker can do here. They start off with a quick pass out to Mike Evans for 5 yards. And then Baker throws his second interception. That seals the game. To, I think is Derek Barnes, which was actually his, Derek Barnes, linebacker, first interception of his career. And that ended the game. And the Lions, they move on to the NFC Championship game. And this is actually the first time in franchise history that the Lions hosted back-to-back playoff games, I believe. So they move on. They'll be taking on the 49ers next week. The stats of the game for the Bucs, Baker Mayfield, 26 of 41, 349 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Rachaad White was their leading rusher with 55 yards. Mike Evans, great game. Had drops in the beginning, but put together a great game. 8 receptions for 147 yards and a touchdown. Cade Otton had 5 for 65 and a touchdown. Godwin had 4 for 40. Rachaad White had 4 for 36 and a touchdown. Trey Palmer had 2 for 32. The Bucs had 2 sacks in the game. Chase McLaughlin went 1 for 2 with field goals. Missed the 50-yarder. And then as for the Lions, Jared Goff had a good game. 287 yards passing, went 30 of 43, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Lions ran the ball for 114 yards in total. Jahmyr Gibbs, 74 yards on the ground and a touchdown. David Montgomery had 33 yards on the ground. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 8 receptions for 77 yards and a touchdown. Sam Laporta had 9 for 65. Gibbs had 4 for 40. Jamison Williams had 2 for 35. Josh Reynolds had 2 for 27. Brock Wright had, just that one catch for 29 yards, which was big in the game. The Lions defense had 4 sacks in the game. Because in the beginning, you had the safeties and the corners blitzing, and the Bucs just did an awful job picking it up. And then, of course, you had the 2 interceptions as well. For the Bucs, they were looked at it to be going into the year as like one of the worst teams in football. That's how people were projecting them. Baker Mayfield, he was competing. They brought him in to compete with Kyle Trask to be the starting quarterback. Baker wins the job, and he went out and had a good year. And now there's mutual interest between the two sides. So you think he's going to be back. But my friend sent this because Adam Schefter tweeted all the Bucs free agents, and there's a lot. You have Baker, you have Mike Evans. You also have their 2 linebackers, Devin White and Levante David, and you also have Antoine Winfield, who had a great year. That's a problem because I don't think they're going to be able to bring all those guys back. Now, you start by bringing back Baker and Mike Evans, but then you got to try to bring back these guys on defense. Because you don't get. that's a big chunk of your defense, and those guys were there for the Super Bowl. So those are like some of the last remaining pieces from that Super Bowl. So this is going to be an interesting offseason for the Bucs. I think they at least found their quarterback for the moment in Baker Mayfield. I think he deserves to come back and be their quarterback going forward. Him and Mike Evans were great this year, and they were great in this game. And it also just goes to show you how different playoff football is. The first time these two teams met, it was 20-6, and Baker played awful. But in this game, listen, they played well. It's just, the Lions were the better team here, and they just they fell a little short. But I think they at least for the moment have their quarterback. So I think Baker Mayfield deserves to get a contract from them, and then you work on bringing your core back, the best you can, because maybe some of those guys might want to go elsewhere, because maybe they might not look at the Bucs as a team that's a Super Bowl contender, because I don't look at the Bucs as that. But you know what? They finished with a better record than they did last year. They won the division. The division is weak. We'll see. It's going to be different next year if the Falcons getting a new head coach. You might have Bill Belichick in that division. You might also have a new quarterback for the Falcons. So it's going to be interesting. But a solid season by Baker Mayfield, and I'm happy that it looks like he's found the new home in Tampa, and I hope the Bucs are able to bring back most of their guys, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. So yeah, the Bucs season ends. Lions, they move on. Happy for them. Getting to the NFC Championship, what they've been able to accomplish, and what Dan Campbell and those guys have built over there in Detroit is unbelievable. The fans over there really deserve it. Happy for Jared Goff, because obviously, you get traded, and you basically get sent to Detroit, and it looks like this might be the end, but the Lions, they have their quarterback, and that's Jared Goff, and he did something that Matthew Stafford was not able to do in his tenure in Detroit. Not blaming Stafford for it, but they never got to this. They never got this far. But with Jared Goff as the quarterback, they have. And now they play against the 49ers, and the last time these two teams met was way back first week of the regular season in 2021, and the Niners won that game. I think it was 38-31. So it was a high-scoring game. But obviously, things are different. That was when Jimmy Garoppolo was the starter. Now it's Brock Purdy, and of course, the Lions are a better team than they were back then, because they only won like 3 games in 2021. So I'm really looking forward to both championship games. But I'm really happy for the Lions and what they've been able to accomplish this year. I think right now they opened up as 7-point underdogs against the 49ers. So we'll see. And obviously we got the whole week to, talk about the game, both games. But listen, credit to the Lions, man. It's been a long time, and they're in the championship game. They've gotten this far, and obviously for them, they have bigger aspirations. Of course, they don't want to stop here. They want to keep going. So we'll see what happens now next week. And of course, like I said, I got the whole week to talk about it. So, that's pretty much it when talking about this game. Obviously, we got one more game to go here, which is again, I kind of pushed it off because it was a blowout. And the better team did win. But that's why, because I wanted to get these three. The other 3 games were great. 3 of the 4 games were great. Definitely this weekend was definitely better than last weekend, because we had a lot of blowouts last weekend. But so when we come back, we'll talk about the Ravens' blowout win against the Texans. We'll get into that, and then that'll be it for the show today. And then we'll get you set for Championship Sunday, which we're going to talk about that a lot this week, because now it's just down to 2 games. Um, so yeah, we're getting closer to the Super Bowl, which is which I mean the playoffs. Like I said, they fly by. I mean it's just what happens. I mean you get all excited for this weekend, and just flies by. It's going to be the same thing with next week, and then you got that week in between the Super Bowl and the championship Sunday and the Super Bowl. You got all the Pro Bowl stuff that's going to be going on, but I mean there's not really anything to talk about with that. Yeah, so we're moving right along here. So when we come back from our final break of the show, we will recap this game between the Ravens and the Texans. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are now going to recap the final divisional round matchup here, and that is the Ravens-Texans game. So going into this game, obviously a rematch from week one. And, I did say, hey, these teams are completely different. Well, not completely, but they are different from the first time they played against each other. But this game ended up being worse than that matchup because the Ravens, they dominated this game. And it was 10-10 at the half. This was a competitive game for a little bit. But then the Ravens, they turned it up and they shut out the Texans 24-0 in the second half. So the Texans got the ball to start the game. They punted. Then the Ravens, they got on the board with a field goal. Justin Tucker from 53 yards out. So that put the Ravens up 3-0. Then both teams exchanged punts. The Texans then again answered with the field goal. So that was a Kaimi Fairbairn 50-yarder. Then the Ravens, they got a touchdown. Lamar Jackson connected with Nelson Aguilar for a 3-yard touchdown. Then in the second quarter, the Texans punted. Then the Ravens punted. And the Texans ran it back. A Steven Sims 67-yard punt return. So that was big in the game. So that tied it. Then the Ravens punted. And then the Texans, they got into field goal range, and Fairbairn missed a 47-yarder. So it was 10-10 at the half. Then the Ravens opened it up in the second half. 6-play, 55-yard drive. Almost 3 minutes of time of possession down the field. Lamar Jackson, a 15-yard touchdown run. So that put them up 17-10. Texans punted. Ravens then cashed in another touchdown. 12 plays, 93 yards. 7 minutes of time of possession. Lamar Jackson connected with Isaiah Likely for a 15-yard touchdown, so that put them up 24-10. Texans punted again. Ravens, another touchdown drive, 11 plays, 78 yards, 7 minutes, 10 seconds of time possession down the field. And Lamar Jackson, another rushing touchdown from 8 yards out. So that put them up 31-10. Then the Texans turned it over on downs. And then Justin Tucker kicked another field goal, 43-yard field goal. So that ended up being the final score, 34-10. For the Texans in this game, their offense just could not get anything going. C.J. Stroud went 19-33, 175 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. They only ran the ball for 38 yards in total. Devin Singletary had 22 yards on the ground. Nico Collins had 5 receptions for 68 yards. Singletary had 4 for 48. Dalton Schultz had 5 for 43. The Texans defense had 3 sacks in the game. But yeah, it was a rough go for their offense. And then for Lamar Jackson. So I thought he was going to pass for more yards in this game because he only passed for, I think, 169 in the Week 1 matchup. Passed for 152. So he passed for even less. But it didn't matter. Lamar went 16 to 22 for two touchdowns, no interceptions, 152 yards passing. But the Ravens ran the ball for 229 yards and 2 touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns by Lamar Jackson. So Justice Hill had 66 yards. Lamar Jackson had 100. He was their leading rusher. Gus Edwards had 40. And Dalvin Cook, 8 carries for 23 yards. And he had a 19-yard run. And you're like, wow, okay, all right, Dalvin. And then after that, he just did nothing. But yeah, so they got Dalvin Cook involved. But yeah, the Ravens' running attack did its job in this game. And then in the receiving game, Zay Flowers was their leading receiver, 4 receptions for 41 yards. Rashad Bateman had 3 for 39. Isaiah Likely 2 for 34 and a touchdown. Aguilar had 2 for 12 and a touchdown. Odell Beckham Jr. had 1 for 12. The Ravens, no sacks in this game. So C.J. Stroud was able to avoid the pressure, but again, they just could not get anything going. But yeah, it looked early on that maybe we might see another, bad loss by the Ravens in the playoffs because, it was a close game. But they turned it up in the second half. They really did. So credit to them for that. But also, I just said that. It was like, oh, this doesn't look good. We might be entering familiar territory with the Ravens in the playoffs. But at the same time, the Texans' offense was doing nothing. They could not get anything going. And I did say on Friday that, with the weather being bad, and I said, the Texans, they, have not played good in bad weather. They just haven't. It wasn't raining, but, I went back to the Jet game. C.J. Stroud did not play well there. They did have some injuries in that game, but still, didn't play well. And then in this spot, really couldn't get anything going. And they really couldn't run the ball. And I said, I have more faith in the Ravens rushing attack, which, a lot of people would say that as well. And that was the case. They ran the ball for 229 yards, Lamar Jackson, of course, is a part of that. Again, he was their leading rusher, 100 yards. The Ravens, they turned it up, and they looked really good in the second half. So, and listen, they were the 1 seed for a reason. And obviously you go back to a couple years ago when they, lost that game to the Titans and the criticism on resting the starters the final week and had that huge layoff. Yeah, it looked like that was the case early on in the game. But like the 49ers, they were able to, get that rust off and, at least win for this week. Now you go into next week feeling good. Well, at least for the Ravens, I think you're feeling better, I would say, off of their win as opposed to the 49ers. The 49ers, they had to really, gut that one out. But the Ravens, once the second half started, the first half, I guess if you were a Ravens fan, you were definitely freaking out because the game was tied. But they turned it up in the second half. And, listen, they were just a better team. The Texans, give them credit. They, again, a team that wasn't really expected to do much this year, but they found their coach, they found their quarterback, and they are going to be, they're going to be a good team. They just got to continue to build this team up, and, they could find themselves back in the playoffs next year. But again, it's hard, and you never know what's going to happen with injuries and things like that. But, they are, the Texans have a bright future. So I think for them, they don't have to be, obviously getting blown out in the playoffs, it's disappointing, and you don't want to lose like that. But, again, the Ravens were the 1 seed for a reason, and they will be hosting the AFC Championship game next week, and that will be against Patrick Mahomes and the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs. So it doesn't get any easier, But, credit to them and, what they've been able to do this year. It's going to be a tough matchup between, the Ravens and the Chiefs. And they haven't played each other in a while. The last time they played, similar to the matchup on the other side in the NFC Championship, it was the second week of the 2021 season. And the final score of that was 36-35, I think it was. And that was the game where Clyde Edwards-Helaire fumbled as the Chiefs were driving to get into field goal range, and then the Ravens went for it on fourth down. In their own territory. Lamar Jackson picked up the first down, and Lamar Jackson defeated Patrick Mahomes for the first time. Because that was a big criticism with Lamar is, when his teams would fall down and be behind, do they have the ability to come back? And also not being able to beat Patrick Mahomes, because Patrick Mahomes won the previous 3 meetings. But they got they got the win there. So yeah, I mean, right now, currently, Lamar Jackson is 1-3 against Patrick Mahomes. It's been a while since they played. I'm really looking forward to the game. Because a lot of people were talking about it being, everyone was talking about Mahomes-Allen being the next Manning Brady. Before that, it was, about Lamar and Mahomes, because they were playing each other a lot too. Yeah, it should be a great game. Listen, it's gonna be a true test, for Lamar now, because now you got that playoff win at home. Now you're gonna be playing the Chiefs. I mean, it's gonna be a tough game. It's gonna be a tough game. But the Ravens, their running attack, is the best in the NFL, arguably, even with the injuries this year. And Lamar obviously has played like an MVP this year. So, the Ravens, and the Ravens are at home. It's not like they're going to Arrowhead. They're going to have Baltimore and that crowd behind them. So now we'll see Patrick Mahomes in his second road playoff start. And the other thing too is the Ravens have a good defense. They have a very good defense. And that's something that's been banged up the last couple of seasons. I mean, they still have some injuries on that side of the ball, but defense not so much this year. I mean, they are. That's what's held this team back the last couple of years is injuries. They've been able to get to now they're at this point, and we'll see what happens. We're 49ers and Ravens went away from that Super Bowl logo theory being legit. So next week, I think it's 3 p.m. Eastern time. The AFC Championship will be on first. So you got the Chiefs against Baltimore, and then in the second game, the NFC Championship game, I think that's 6:30 or 6:40 p.m. Eastern time. You'll have the Lions and the 49ers. So we'll get you set for that. We'll talk about it throughout the week, of course. But yeah, really exciting stuff. It was a great divisional round, of course. Again, this game, not so much. I mean, again, there was drama in the beginning, but imagine if Sims doesn't take back that punt return, then that game's the Texans don't even score a touchdown. I mean, they just could not get anything going on offense. But again, like I talked about last week, the weather and I think that was going to be a factor because the Texans were a different team at home this year, as opposed to the road. They lost to the Panthers on the road this year. They lost to the Falcons on the road. Even though the Falcons actually weren't like terrible at home. But still, like they had some and then of course, they lost to the Jets. Like they've had some bad road playoff losses. Well, the Falcons play in a dome, so that that kind of doesn't really matter. But still, like again, you see what I'm saying here though. But yeah, and it was going to be tough. I mean, you're going against the number 1 seed, and they just really they couldn't get anything going offensively. I thought early on in the game the defense was holding up, but they just they just really couldn't get anything going on offense. They just couldn't find it. But like I said, for them, like they have nothing to be ashamed about. I mean, they won the division. They won a playoff game. They have their quarterback. They have their coach. This team is going to be a problem moving forward. And, again, with all the older quarterbacks retiring and on their way out, the NFL is going to be in good hands for a long time with all these quarterbacks that we have. So, don't have to be worried about it. We're in good hands. So we'll see, what the Texans do in the offseason. But, credit to them on what they were able to do this year. But yeah, Championship Sunday, it's upon us, as we will again talk about it a lot this week, and we'll get you set for it. We'll talk about some matchups and things like that throughout the week, and obviously Friday will be when we do the picks and things like that. So yeah, we're now down to the final four. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the show for today. Again, I thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think about the games. What was your favorite moment from the games from this weekend? Let me know in the comments. And yeah, so with that is all the time that we have for today. Again, thank you guys for watching. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care.